Hey folks, I hope that you guys are doing pretty well. So today is Saturday, the 9th of August 2025, and in today's video I'm going to do part 2 of Isaiah chapter 51, okay? Now on part 1 I left it on verse 7, okay? So on part 2 I completed this today. It's gonna be 3 parts, and we're gonna be going from verse 8 to verse 17, and then on Monday I will finish it off from verse 18 to 23, okay? So it's actually quite interesting, this second part actually. There are some interesting prophecies, but what I'm gonna be doing from now on with my biblical decipherings, I'm just gonna buy these, exercise booklets, and instead of sort of like ripping pages from the exercise book and then putting a staple on them, I'm just gonna write books and just leave them like that. So I'm gonna start collecting books of my biblical decipherings like this. These are very cheap in the supermarket. I think they cost me 75 cents Australian, or maybe up to $1. I forget exactly, something like that. So I'm just gonna leave them like this. These are gonna be my biblical deciphering booklets. So yeah, rather than just ripping up the pages, because with my biblical decipherings I had them all here, you see. But then I'm just gonna be making booklets, okay? Alright folks, let's head back to Isaiah chapter 51, verse 8. Now I won't be showing you the Bible because I already written the verses here, okay? So let's get straight into it. Verse 8. For the moth shall eat them up like a garment. That's interesting. The moth shall eat them up like a garment, and the worm shall eat them like wool. That's also very interesting. You gotta do a fair bit of analytical thinking about this. How the moth shall eat them. Of course, this is talking about the Gentiles, and this is a millennial kingdom prophecy. Okay, now more in a moment. But my righteousness shall be forever, and my salvation from generation to generation. So basically, for my commentary here, I wrote, now this is a millennial kingdom prophecy. For the moth shall eat them up like a garment, and the worm shall eat them like wool. What does this mean? So what this is saying is that the Gentiles, okay, not the Jewish people, because according to Romans 11:26, all Israel will be saved during the millennial kingdom, but those Gentiles that might get through into the millennial kingdom without the Holy Spirit, okay, we know that they're going to be living through until the end of the millennial kingdom, but we know that some of them will perish if they don't obey Jesus, because we know that he's going to be ruling with a rod of iron. So nonetheless, what is he saying, okay, in other words, that the moth shall eat them up like a garment, and the worm shall eat them like wool, is that the Gentiles that will be living through the millennial kingdom, although they are being preserved, okay, for a short period of 1,000 years in comparison to eternity, okay, so that's why it's short. 1,000 years is nothing in comparison to eternity. In order, okay, to glorify Jesus for his 1,000 years of reign, and to fulfill the prophecy in Revelation 19:16, and he had on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So in the end and in the process, okay, so the fact that these Gentiles are going to be living for 1,000 years, okay, this 1,000 years is going to be a process, if you like. And these Gentiles that are going to be living through the millennial kingdom, they have to be there because they are needed for Bible prophecy fulfillment, so that Jesus can say, I'm the King of Kings and Lords of Lords, okay? But nonetheless, these Gentiles that will live through the millennial kingdom, it's a process. It's a process because at the end of the millennial kingdom, we know that they're going to come to the camps of the saints, and the beloved city, Jerusalem. And in the process, okay, they're going to be spiritually be rotting, because at the end of the millennial kingdom, when God, unleashes Satan or the devil to them, to the four quarters of the earth, that the devil is going to deceive them. And so at the end, they're going to be like moth. The Gentiles will be like moth, and spiritually. So for the moth shall eat them up like a garment. So spiritually, the fact that the devil is going to deceive them, they're going to perish, and the worm shall eat them like wool. That means that when they go to hell, the worm will eat them, But more of that in a moment, but I'm just letting you know that this is a process, okay? So, yeah, these Gentiles are needed so that to fulfill the prophecy in Revelation 19:16, and he had on his vesture and on his thigh a name written King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So Jesus, okay, needs these Gentiles, even though at the end they're gonna be like moth. They're gonna, for the moth shall eat them up like a garment. They're gonna be spiritually be decaying because Jesus needs them. He needs the Gentiles to glorify him, so that this prophecy in Revelation 19:16 can be fulfilled. So in the end, this is all a process, okay? In the end, and in the process towards the millennial kingdom, the Gentiles, will rot spiritually like a moth eating a garment, as the prophecy of Revelation 29 swallows them up. In other words, and they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city Jerusalem, and fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. You see? So this is all a process, folks, so that these prophecies in Revelation 19:16, in other words, that Jesus can glorify himself amongst the Gentiles, so that he can be the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, okay? And also so that this prophecy in Revelation 20 verse 9 swallows them up, okay? So that's why it's saying here, for the moth shall eat them up. This is about the Gentiles, because all Israel will be saved in the millennial kingdom. That is says in Romans 11:26. For the moth shall eat them up like a garment. They're going to be spiritually dead in the end when Satan is released and deceives them, and the worm shall eat them up like wool, because when they go to hell, the worm will be there to eat them up, okay? So this is all a process, folks, a process to fulfill these prophecies in Revelation 19:16 and Revelation 20 verse 9, okay? And more over the page. And the worm shall eat them like wool. When these Gentiles die and go down to hell, as they burn, where the worm dieth not, and the fire is not quenched, like it says in Mark 9:48. So you see, where the worm dieth not, and the fire is not quenched. So the worm is gonna eat them up, like wool, according to Mark 9:48. But then the other part of the prophecy reads, but my righteousness shall be forever, and my salvation from generation to generation. Like it says here, in the prophecy here in verse 8. But my righteousness shall be forever, and my salvation from generation to generation. So that bit of the prophecy, I wrote down, the righteousness of God shall be forever, and his salvation from generation to generation. This prophecy is for eternity, okay? Because it's talking about, that his righteousness shall be forever, and forever can only happen in eternity, and my salvation from generation to generation, meaning in eternity. So this part of the prophecy here is actually for eternity, okay? So the righteousness of God shall be forever, and his salvation from generation to generation. This prophecy is for eternity because the promise being made here, okay, in the scripture is forever. And so it links up really well with Revelation 21:3, which reads, "And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God." So the fact that, this bit of the prophecy, "But my righteousness shall be forever, and my salvation from generation to generation," this prophecy is actually for eternity because, during the eternity, God is going to tabernacle with men, when we inherit the new Jerusalem, with the new heavens and the new earth, and God will do with them, of course, with the Jewish people and the saints, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. And so, because, God is going to tabernacle with men, with the Jewish people and the saints, if you like, this is going to be the righteousness of God forever. The fact that he's going to be tabernacling with men, that's going to be his righteousness forever. And of course, his salvation will be from generation to generation, because once we inherit eternity, nobody can hurt the Jewish people anymore, and so his salvation is going to go from generation to generation forever, okay? Now then, that's why it requires a lot of thinking, these prophecies. Verse 9, "Awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord. Awake, as in the ancient days, in the generations of old. Art thou not in that hath cut Rahab and wounded the dragon?" This is also quite interesting as well. Now, this is also a millennial kingdom prophecy. Most of these, Isaiah chapter 51, is actually for the millennial kingdom. Now, in my commentary here, I put down this is a millennial kingdom prophecy in that Jesus will lead and protect the Jewish people as in ancient times, okay? So because this is here, "Awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord." Awake as in the ancient days, okay? So, in the generations of old. So, basically, just like the days of old when, the Jewish people under the law were following God, and so, when Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom, Jesus will lead and protect the Jewish people, just like he did when Israel used to have the first and the second temple, okay? So Jesus will lead and protect the Jewish people as in ancient times, when God led them with a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud, and therefore God defeated Rahab, or the Egyptians, if you like, and wounded the dragon. By wounding the dragon, it was not only Pharaoh, but Satan himself, See Exodus 14, verses 13 to 31 to read the whole account of Exodus, when, Moses lifted up his staff and, parted the seas and so on. So, so this is a millennial kingdom prophecy, when Jesus will be fully awake, to fully lead, the Jewish people, to protect them, just like in the days of old, when Israel had the first and the second temple, and also when God, like it says here, when God led the Jewish people, out of Egypt, although not that had cut Rahab, was the Egyptians and wounded the dragon, but what he's trying to say here is that the one who wounded, not just the Egyptians, but also Satan himself, because we wrestle against principalities as well. So that's what he's trying to say in here. So anyway, the Lord Jesus will reign with a strong arm during his millennial kingdom, and multiple Bible prophecies can attest to this, such as Isaiah 9:7, of the increase of his garment and peace there shall be no end. It is also linked to Psalm 89 verses 3 and 4, also Psalm 93 verses 1 and 2, etc., etc. But Psalm 93 verse 2 is perhaps the best prophecy of all, if you like, and it reads, "Thy throne is established of old," okay? Thou art from everlasting. So basically, just to recap here, when Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom, yeah, he's going to be fully awake. He's going to be fully strong. He's going to rule with a rod of iron, like it says in the book of Revelation. And just like in ancient days of old. And he will protect the Jewish people, and he will lead them, until their salvation. In a similar way, when God, defeated the Egyptians and also wounded the dragon, but the dragon here is kind of like a double meaning here. It's Pharaoh plus Satan himself, if you like, okay? Now then, verse 10. Although not it which hath dried the sea, the waters of the great deep, of course, is talking about here Exodus, where Moses lifted up his staff, okay, and the Jewish people crossed the Red Sea, that have made the depths of the sea a way for the ransom to pass over, okay, so commentary. So this prophecy does not need introduction, that's right, because we all know that this is Exodus, Moses lifting up his staff, and the Jewish people, passing through the Red Sea, and so it needs no introduction. It is known, if you like. It's all about God leading the Jewish people through the Red Sea. Of course, it's linked to Exodus 14, verses 21 and 22. And in verse 14, in Exodus 14, verse 21, it reads, Moses stretched his hand over the sea. And then on verse 22, and the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground. Okay, so yeah, this prophecy here needs no introduction. Everybody already knows it. Verse 11, therefore the redeemer of the Lord shall return and come with singing unto Zion, and everlasting joy shall be upon their head. They shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and mourning shall flee away. So of course this is a millennial kingdom, in as much as God redeemed, a lot of Jewish people during the Red Sea crossing during Exodus, he's also going to be redeeming a third of the Jewish people will come through, or they're going to be coming out from the land of Israel, if you like. So for my commentary here, this is a millennial kingdom prophecy, when the Redeemer of the Lord, when according to Psalm 107 verse 2, the redeemed, if you like, and let me turn over the page here, and according to Zechariah 13:9, and I will bring the third part through the fire, and will refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them, and I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, the Lord is my God. Okay, so the redeemed, this will come to pass in a similar way to how the redeemed of the Lord were saved during the Red Sea, crossing as the Red Sea crossing as per Exodus, of course, in context following from verse 10, these were the redeemed during Exodus. These are the redeemed when Jesus comes back on verse 11 for the millennial kingdom. Okay, so yeah, this prophecy on verse 8, if you like, sorry, on verse will come to pass, when Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom, So it will come to pass in a similar way to how the Redeemer of the Lord was saved during the Red Sea crossing as part of Exodus. They shall obtain gladness and joy. This part of the prophecy is linked to Jeremiah 31, verse 13, and it reads, "For I will turn their mourning into joy and will comfort them and make them rejoice from their sorrow," etc., etc. So there are more prophecies, if you like, Now, verse 12. Even I, am he that comforteth you. Who are thou that thou shouldest be afraid of? Amen. In other words, that shall die. He's talking about the Gentiles here, and of the Son of Man, which shall be made as grass. So basically, from my commentary here, what he's saying is, Jesus, is the one whom will comfort and protect you. So do not be afraid of other men or Gentiles that will eventually perish like withered grass. And as per Revelation 20, verse 3, this prophecy is also deeply linked to Isaiah 60, verse 12. For the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish. Yea, those nations shall be utterly wasted. It is also linked to Isaiah 43, 4. Since thou wast precious in my sight, thou hast been honorable, and I have loved thee. Therefore, I will give men for thee, and people for thy life. So basically, just to recap on this, Jesus is saying, hey, don't be afraid of those Gentiles anymore once you're in the millennial kingdom, because eventually they are all going to die anyway at the end of the millennial kingdom, according to Revelation 20, verse 3. And I just touched that a moment ago on verse 8, I think it was. On verse 8. When, in Revelation 20, verse 9, it reads, "And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city, and fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them." So, these Gentiles eventually are going to perish. Okay, so it's all a process for them. All those Gentiles that will be in the millennial kingdom, for them in the end, they're going to perish. For them, it's just a process, because God needs to glorify himself to fulfill, like I said earlier, those prophecies, in Revelation 19:16, that he's going to be the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And he needs these Gentiles so that he can be the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But it's only a process for them, because in the end, the Gentiles, the moth shall eat them up like a garment, and they're going to be going to hell, where the worm shall eat them up like wool, like I said earlier. So for the Gentiles, it's only just a process, but all Israel will be saved during the millennial kingdom. According to Romans 11:26. Okay, so if you start reading, these prophecies, here in verse 12, just to recap. So this prophecy is deeply linked to Isaiah 60, verse 12. For the nation and kingdom that shall not serve thee shall perish, And like I just told you earlier, at the end of the millennial kingdom, the Gentiles are going to perish anyway, And in Isaiah 43, verse 4, it says here, I will give men for thee and people for thy life. The Gentiles won't matter too much, during the millennial kingdom. That will be just a part of a process to fulfill Bible prophecies, so that Jesus can be the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That's it, folks. That's the bottom line at the end of the day. It's all about the fulfillment of Bible prophecies. Then verse 13. And forgottest the Lord thy Maker, that has stretched forth the heavens and laid the foundations of the earth, and has feared continually every day because of the fury of the oppressor, as if he were ready to destroy. And where is the fury of the oppressor? So basically what Jesus is saying here my people or the Jewish people, don't forget that I'm your Lord and thy Micah, and I'm the one who made heaven and earth, okay? And there's no reason for you to fear, the oppressor, which, the Jewish people are just coming out of the tribulation period. They have been oppressed by all the nations, okay, and also by the Antichrist. If you read Luke chapter 21, verses 20 to 24, how many Jewish people will be taken captives to all nations, and they're going to be oppressed, okay, and also by the Antichrist. But Jesus is saying, hey, right now you're in the millennial kingdom, because this is a millennial kingdom prophecy, this verse 13, and Jesus is saying, don't forget that I'm your Micah, I make heavens and the earth, and where is your oppressor right now? He's already dealt with him, So from my commentary, I wrote down, Jesus is saying in this scripture, don't forget your Micah and what I have been capable of doing by creating the heavens and the earth, as per Genesis 1:1. Do not fear the oppressor or the Antichrist anymore, as if somehow he's still here. Where is the oppressor or the Antichrist, or even those nations? When Jesus returned for his second coming, according to Jeremiah 30, verse 16, therefore, in other words, that this verse 13 is linked to Jeremiah 30, verse 16, therefore, all they that devour thee shall be devoured, and all thine adversaries, every one of them, shall go into captivity. Okay? And they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. Okay? And this prophecy is also linked to Zechariah 8, verses 7 and 8. And on verse 7 here, Zechariah 8:7, I will save my people from the east country and from the west country. And on 8:8 in Zechariah, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God. See also Isaiah 54:17, and it reads, no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. And this is actually a millennial kingdom prophecy. It's Isaiah 54:17. And so Jesus is saying here, don't forget that I'm here now. Your oppressors have been dealt with, okay, with all these prophecies here. And basically, no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. So the Jewish people won't have to worry about anything, okay? Well then, so verse 14, the captive exile, okay, exile, hasteneth that he might be loose, and that he should not die in the pit, nor that his bread should fall. So basically, what is saying here, the captives or the Jewish people, okay, because they're going to be captives according to Luke 21:24, okay. So from a comment to the Jewish people that are captives all over the world, as per Luke 21:24, which reads, and shall be led away captive into all nations, shall be released, okay, quickly, like it says here, the captive exile hastened that he might be loose, okay. So that when Jesus returns, the Jewish people will be released quickly, and that they're not going to die, because all Israel shall be saved, according to Romans 11:26. And they're not going to go to hell, because all Israel shall be saved, and Jesus is going to make sure that he feeds them, okay. So to put some prophecies to link this verse 14, then this prophecy can be linked to Isaiah 40 verses 10-11. And in Isaiah 40:10 it reads, behold, the Lord God will come with a strong hand, okay, and his arm shall rule for him. So because Jesus is going to come with a strong hand, the people that are captive will be let out or loose from their prisons quickly, okay, because he's coming with a strong hand, okay. Behold, the Lord will come with a strong hand, and his arm shall rule for him. And then here on Isaiah 40:11 it reads, he shall feed his flock like a shepherd, okay. So the Jewish people won't have to worry about their bread, because God is going to feed them, okay. But this verse 14 really links really well, if you like, with or really links up very well with Isaiah 41:17, which reads, "When the poor and needy seek water, these are the Jewish people, and there is none, and the tongue fileth for thirst, I the Lord will hear them." Okay, no matter where they are, escapists, God will hear them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. Okay, so God is going to make sure that they're not going to die, of hunger or thirst. He's going to come with a strong arm to make sure that the Jewish people are released quickly. Okay. It's also linked to Isaiah 43 verses 19 and 20, etc., etc. Verse 15. "But I am the Lord thy God that divided the sea, whose waters roar. The Lord of hosts is his name." Commentary: this prophecy requires no introduction. The Red Sea moment as for Exodus 14:21. Okay, so we all know this. So let's move on then to verse 16. "And I have put my words in thy mouth, and I have covered thee in the shadow of my hand, that I might plant the heavens and lay the foundations of the earth, and say unto Zion, thou art my people." So for my commentary here, Paul, this is also a millennial kingdom prophecy, and it's linked to Hebrews 8:11. "And they shall not teach every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord. For all shall know me, from the least to the greatest." It is also linked to Jeremiah 31:34, which is very similar, which is also, a millennial kingdom prophecy. I'm going to be deciphering Hebrews chapter 8 in the not too distant future, because it does have millennial kingdom prophecies, okay? And I already got it highlighted on my Bible. There's a few things that I need to decipher as I move along, okay? Now, in Jeremiah 31:34, "And they shall teach us no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord, for I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sins no more." Okay, see also Isaiah chapter 50 verse 4 and Isaiah 59:21. So basically this prophecy is about making sure that Jesus, when he comes back for the millennial kingdom, he's saying, "I have put my words in thy mouth, and I have covered thee in the shadows of my hands." So basically, Jesus is going to make sure that, all the Jewish people are going to know about the Lord, okay? They shall know him, everyone from the least to the greatest, okay? Because he's going to put his words in the Jewish people's mouths, okay? So, so that, the Jewish people, when Jesus comes back to rule for the millennial kingdom, and saying to Zion, "Thou art my people." So in other words, God wants the Jewish people to know about him, to know about his word, That's why he's saying here, "And they shall not teach every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for all shall know me." So the fact that, Jesus wants everyone to know him, so that this verse 16, this prophecy can come to pass, in other words, that the Jewish people know about the word of Jesus, so that Jesus can comfortably rule from Zion, and that, the Jewish people truly know that, they are the people of God, because God is also going to be making a new covenant with them when he comes back for the millennial kingdom, okay? So I can go, a lot deeper into this, but, for the sake of this video, not to keep it too long, I will move forward, okay? But it does require a lot more thinking, and there are a lot more prophecies that I can put in here, but at least I'm just giving you an idea if you like to work with, okay? Verse 17, awake, awake, this is another millennial kingdom prophecy. "Stand up, O Jerusalem, which has drunk at the hand of the Lord the cup of his fury. Thou hast drunk in the dregs of the cup of trembling, and grant them out." This is actually a prophecy that requires a lot of deep analytical thinking, Then from our commentary here about this is a millennial kingdom prophecy. So this millennial kingdom prophecy is about the fury of the Lord, like it says here, when he fulfills the prophecies in Joel 2:1, blow you the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. And it's also then linked to Joel 3:2. Let me just turn the page. And I will also gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, so that Jesus can deal with them with his fury. It's also linked to Zechariah 14 verses 1 and 2, and on verse 2 here it reads, "For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle." It's also linked to Revelation 19:15, "And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations." Okay. It's also partly, putting in inverted commas, linked as a type with Zechariah 12:2, because it's partly linked as a type of Zechariah 12:2, because in Zechariah 12:2 it reads, "I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about." Now, the reason this is actually a type, or partly linked as a type, but not linked straight into a prophecy as in Revelation 19:15 or even Joel 3:2. It's linked partly as a type, but not directly, because Zechariah 12:2, in other words, "I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all people round about." This is a prophecy that's going to happen at the end of the millennial kingdom, this prophecy, okay? Now, I put here, in which this is a prophecy for the end of the millennial kingdom, which is linked to Revelation 20 verse 9. That's right. Zechariah 12:2 is actually linked to Revelation 20 verse 9, because what's going to happen is that all nations, when God releases Satan to deceive all the nations of the world at the end of the millennial kingdom, Jerusalem is going to become a cup of trembling, and all those that come to Jerusalem, they're going to be, annihilated, according to Revelation 20 verse 9. And they, in other words, the Gentiles went up on the breadth of earth and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city Jerusalem, and fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. Okay, so don't be confused thinking that just because it says a cup of trembling, okay, that this cup of trembling somehow is relating to Zechariah 12:2, thinking this is going to happen, when Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom straight away, in other words, to judge the nations. No. In my view anyway, in my study of the Bible, this Zechariah 12:2, in other words, a cup of trembling, this is going to happen at the end of the millennial kingdom, because all nations, all people, you got to read the wording very carefully, all people, everyone is going to come, to the camp of the saints and so on. And that's why this Zechariah 14:2 is actually linked to Revelation 20 verse 9, okay? When all nations come, to the beloved city, and God is going to bring fire from heaven and wipe them all out, or devour them, okay? Now, it's partly a type, because the prophecy here is saying, thou hast drunken the dregs of the cup of trembling, and grant them out. So it's not talking about the cup of trembling as in when Jesus comes back straight away for the millennial kingdom, and then according to Joel 2:1 and Joel 3:2 and so on, he judges the nations. No, this cup of trembling here, although it's linked to this verse 17, it's actually a type, like I put here, it's partly linked as a type of what's going to happen at the end of the millennial kingdom, when Zechariah 12:2, the cup of trembling, is actually linked to Revelation 20 verse 9. And then when all nations come, God is, come to the camp of the saints, to the beloved city of Jerusalem, then God it's gonna rain fire from heaven and devour them. Okay. And then tomorrow is Sunday here in Sydney. I'm gonna do a bit of shopping and get a bit of fresh air. I spend most of my time in the library deciphering all these verses. So we'll finish it off from verse 18 to 23 on Monday when I go to the library and finish it up, and then do a video later at night sometime. Alright folks, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.